Thank you for joining me. You took your time out of your day to come hear about what I'm speaking about today, which is the Middle East, history, culture, religion, politics, all intersect in this glorious hotspot right now. And obviously with the conflict going on, there's just a bit more of a spotlight. So I think it's very timely to be talking about this. Are you okay if I treat this a little bit like a lecture? In one of my classes. That'd be okay. It should be called Introduction to the Middle East. If I were to name it a class name or a course code, this would be it. By the end of this session, I hope to inform you about the forces at work in the Middle East, mostly political, geopolitical, from Israel all the way to its neighbours and onto global powers. I also hope to shed some light on what international institutions like the United Nations, the International Criminal Court, and the International Court of Justice, what their roles are, what they're doing. Again, it's a hot topic right now because of what is going on, so I think it's very pertinent to understand why they were created, what they're doing. And lastly, I want to help us to understand what our response is as Christians, as Jesus-believing, Bible-believing Christians. How should we respond to this and equip you with some resources to help you along your journey as well? All right, so let's begin by analysing the historical and biblical context of the Middle East. I think that is the best way to start. Sorry, going back 2 slides. Here we go. Now, Kelvin already touched on this beautifully this morning, so I'm just going to summarize very quickly. Israel is not just another country in the world. It's the center of the whole world. We think we have it pretty good in Australia. If you come from your native land, you probably think your homeland is absolutely fantastic, which I'm sure it is. But the center of the whole world is this tiny slither of land called Israel. From the calling of Abraham to the establishment of Israel as a nation, this land has always and will always be significant to God's purposes. It is the birthplace of civilization, modern-day diplomacy, mathematics, medicine, sociology, science, language, all derive from this one single place in the world. The broader Middle East has always been a place of tension, partly because, Kelvin mentioned, a strategic road map in the world where it intersects Asia, Europe, and Africa. So great powers of the past have always wanted to control this. And we can see that great powers today still want to control this area because of it. However, at the heart of this tension is a spiritual battle. You and I know this. Ephesians 6:12 reminds us that we don't wrestle or fight against flesh or blood, but powers and principalities. And I think that's the number one thing we need to keep at the forefront of our mind when we're looking at this region. The same region where God's promises were made is still the same region where God's purposes are being played out. All right, so we're going to go to understanding the key regional powers. I'm going to start from the middle, the center, Israel, and I'm going to work our way out. Are you guys okay with me coming on this little journey? You can take photos of the slides if you want. Just for time's sake, I might go a little fast, which I apologize for you, but you're more than welcome to take photos of the slides. Israel is a modern, liberal, democratic state with deep religious significance for Jews, Christians, and Muslims. It is in a place where its neighbours do not even want to recognise its existence. So since establishment in 1948, it has been in constant battles, intifadas, complete wars or total wars, which we call them, and almost every single policy decision that Israel makes is in the light of the Palestinian conflict. And I think we have a speaker tomorrow, Jen Lee, who will be speaking on the Arab-Israeli conflict. So I don't want to touch on that today and allow her room to work in that. Now, around Israel are Muslim countries. So there is a difference between Arab countries and Muslim countries, which I won't touch on, but I will talk about the type of Muslim country because that's important to know where I go next. So 2 types of Muslims, many of you may already know, are Sunni Muslims and Shiite or Shia Muslims. The main difference between these types of Muslims derives from
an understanding of who the rightful successor of Muhammad is. Sunni Muslims make up the majority of the global Muslim population, with about 85 to 90% of Muslims. They believe that the community, among general consensus, should determine who leads Muslims. And Shia Muslims believe that the rightful successor of Muhammad was his cousin, aka he was also his son-in-law, and a long line of divinely appointed imams. So that's where sort of the divide comes from there. Shia Muslims also believe, I think you may have heard in the Mahdi, the messianic figure, that all of the world will anticipate at the end of time. So this theological divide also has political dimensions, which we're going to look at right now. Who's heard of Iran? Who's hearing? Yes. Iran is in the news a lot today. So we're going to talk about Iran, because when you hear it in the news, they don't really explain much at all, do they? So Iran is an incredibly powerful state, mainly because of its oil production. Its total goal is to reshift the power play in the Middle East. So its rivalry is Saudi Arabia, and its goal is to shift this political angle into Iran's favor. So it supports governments through the axis of resistance: Russia, China, Iran. Anyone else heard of that? But it also includes Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and various Shia militias in Iraq and Syria. So the tentacles spread wide, if that's a best way of saying it. Iran also seeks to counter US and Western influence in the region, viewing the US or the West as a primary adversary. It actively works to destabilize US-backed governments in the regions and to cause a bit of friction where America has based their military bases in there. It challenges them. It strives to safeguard its Iranian regime through revolutionary ideology by promoting Shia Islam and positioning itself as the leader of the global Shia community, which it is. It's very powerful. Iran's efforts to develop ballistic missile programs and nuclear programs, which I'm sure you've heard of, are aimed at deterring adversaries, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the US, while support for anti-Israel groups like Hezbollah and Hamas honestly just make a problem for Israel. They do this very intentionally. Additionally, Iran leverages its strategic location along the Strait of Hormuz, not hummus, Hormuz, I know now you're thinking about food, to control global oil routes, especially in times of tension. Who noticed that as soon as Biden mentioned Iran in a press conference, the petrol prices went up? Yes, did anyone notice that? About 40 cents. Thank you, Iran. Iran's rivalry with Saudi Arabia is a central relationship in this region to understand, as it seeks to undermine Saudi influence in the region and challenge the traditional Sunni Arab bloc. Israel's relationship with Iran is characterized by deep-seated animosity and geopolitical rivalry. Following the 1979 Iranian Revolution, which established a theocratic regime, Iran became Israel's most significant adversary and has consistently called for its destruction. I don't know if you knew, but prior to revolution, Iran was actually one of Israel's greatest supporters. Did anyone know that? It was such a spanner in the works, and I think an excellent plan of the enemy to just get in there. But Iran used to be a fantastic friend of Israel and was on its way to normalization at the same time that Egypt was, and then the revolution happened. Iran has positioned itself as the leader of the so-called resistance against Western imperialism and Zionism. In this context, Israel is viewed as a colonial outpost of the West. Iran's revolutionary ideology casts Israel as an illegitimate state occupying Muslim land, particularly Jerusalem, which holds immense religious significance in Islam. Israel has been tied to the broader struggle of what they see as oppression and injustice in the Muslim world, and Israel must be rid of. The world must be rid of Israel. Israel views Iran's, and should not just be Israel, the world should view Iran's development of nuclear weapons and programs as an existential threat to their survival. And throughout it, we see nuclear programs. I had this feeling last week that they had already developed nuclear programs, and I think there was a report that came out 3 days ago that they have actually achieved the enrichment of uranium to do so. So this is a very hot topic, haha, no pun intended. Explosive topic. That's terrible. So Saudi Arabia, this is the regional hegemon. When I say the word hegemon, what I mean is they're just the boss. They're the leader. They're the big guys. They lead in both policy decisions, in influence of other Arab states as well. Economically, Saudi's oil reserves make it one of the most, if not the most wealthiest country in the whole world. Its leadership within OPEC allows it to control oil production levels, giving the kingdom significant leverage over both regional and global economies. Religiously, Saudi holds unparalleled influence as the custodians of Islam's two holiest sites. Who knows the two holiest sites in Islam? Yes, and Medina, very good. It plays a central role in the Gulf Cooperation Council, which means it influences the Arab bloc decisions and where they go in terms of policy. The competition for dominance with Iran manifests in proxy conflicts in countries such as Yemen with the Houthis and Syria, where Saudi-backed Sunni-aligned groups in opposition to Iranian-backed groups. There's just a lot of You know when you have children and in the back seat you can hear a slap but you don't know who slapped who. This is and the parents don't know who to who actually was it. Saudi and Iran are a bit like mum and dad in this, in that they will avoid direct confrontation, but they'll do it through all these little slaps around the region just to